Approval of the monthly financial report. Dr. Bell?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, Mr. Superintendent, other board members. I will go into the presentation of the April monthly financial report as of the end of April. But just to take a little time, I'd like to announce that the state has notified us that we no longer will be submitting the monthly deficit elimination plan. Okay? The auditors that are on site, plus talking to the individuals that we submit this plan to electronically, have indicated that they're very, very comfortable we're out of deficit, and so I will not be chasing y'all around trying to get signatures on this anymore.
I'm disappointed.
Yeah. Okay. The monthly report as of the end of April on a straight line basis, we'd be like about 10 months out of 12, or 83.33% of the year gone by. The first page indicates that on a $764,271,000 budget, during the month of April, we actually collected $44,091,000. We spent $70,735,000. Okay, this is, of course, the time of year where we do expend more than we do collect. The good news is over on the left side of page 1, you'll see that of the $764.2 million in estimated revenue we have collected as of the end of April, 90%, or $687.5 million. At the same point in FY13, we had collected 85.6%, so we've actually bettered the collection rate by something over 4%. But the amount collected in 13 was $626 million versus $687 million. So we are over $60 million ahead in terms of collections. Of course, we are operating with a larger budget. The disbursement amount against the $687 million is $608,844,000, or 79.7% of the budget, compared to 90% of the revenue collected. At the same point last year, we had expended 81.8%, so we are expending at a proportionate rate less than last year, and we're collecting at a higher collection rate than last year. If you go to the trend analysis on the third page in, y'all have seen this for some number of months now, that what's really the reason for our revenue collection, what's driving it, is local revenues. You can see in the middle box on the page that we had budgeted local revenues of $384,896,000. We had projected to be at this position of $367,103,000 against the total $384 budgeted. But in point of fact, we've actually collected $387,701,000. So we have collected more than 100% of our budgeted local revenues with 2 months to go. Okay? You might say, well, how can that be? Well, prior year taxes, taxes under appeal, that type of thing. Other components of our ad valorem local revenue have come in substantially above our projections, okay? But we still have 2 months to go. We'll see what happens. On the state component of $379 million, we've actually collected $299,900,000. We're about 0.5% behind, but like I say, we still have the 2 months to go on all of the revenue sources. Turning to page 4, which is a statement of, more detailed statement of our receipts. You can see that in April we collected a little over $44 million, okay? The same month last year we collected $41,719,000, okay? And as I mentioned earlier, in terms of receipts, it was 626 at this point last year. We're at 687 right now. On the disbursement side, if you go to page 8, you'll see that month to date, in terms of disbursements, $70,700,000. That same number last year was $66,391,000. In terms of year to date, we have spent $608,844,000. That was $598,600,000 in 13. We are still operating with an operating surplus. The amount of operating surplus as of April 30th is still $82,408,000. Of course, we're going to be requesting in an agenda item a little later on for a authorization to go forward with a small tax anticipation note as your financial position betters the qualification calculations for your tax anticipation notes narrows, okay? And so we're hoping to be able to issue $35 million in tax anticipation notes, receiving bids on the 7th of July, and that note will be paid off by about the 15th of December this year. So we are keeping a positive operating reserve as we go forward, but of course as the expenditures and the revenues close as we get to the end of the year, we'll see where we end up. Right now, we feel confident, and in the proposed budget document, y'all will note that we're projecting a $20,007,000 fund balance for the general operating budget. Hopefully, we can better that when we do close the books. In your package, if you go to page 36, it gives you sort of a summary in the variance report where we had projected to be at $668,644,000. We're at $687,595. We are ahead, netting the positives and the negatives, $18,900,000. That is how you rebuild your fund balance. You collect more than you think you're going to collect, and you spend less than you project you're going to spend. And I'm proud to say that we're on track to do that, and hopefully we'll maintain this trend in the next number of years to come. That is the monthly financial report for April FY14. I would request that y'all would adopt the report.
Is there any discussion? John?
I had two quick questions, which I think Mr. Ramsey or Dr. Bell, one of the two of you might be able to answer. One, on a positive note, it does look like we are coming in roughly on budget now for legal fees. I know we were running ahead for a number of months, and then now it looks like we're actually on track. Do we feel confident that we're going to hit the budget on legal fees, or is there a timing issue where we actually think we'll still be running ahead of budget? What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Ron. Yes, against the legal fee budget of about $4,550,000, as we get to the end of the year, we think there'll be pressure on that budget component. So we still are projecting we'll go over it slightly. There is some relief in terms of a legal settlements account, which is separate from the legal fee account. One of the things we're doing is anything that is a settlement type of thing that's being paid out of the settlement account. So the settlement account, which has really hardly been used so far this year, that could give the legal fee situation some relief.
And then the second quick question, again, for either you or Mr. Ramsey. I know earlier in the year we talked about a problem with workers' compensation that was embedded within another line item here. That line item, again, seems to have plateaued. Do we feel like that situation's kind of mostly run its course now? I remember you saying the projection was there would be a spike and then it would plateau. Has that held true?
It has held true, Mr. Coleman. Thank you.
And as you recall, we did at mid-year adjust the workers' comp budget. And it appears right now we're staying within that.
Mr. Mayfield?
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. One, I guess, is on the taxes on beverages. Do we have a way to assess the accuracy of those? I guess I would think that with Sunday sales, as an example, that those numbers would actually be higher, but they're lower. would be my first question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayfield. As you know, the beverage tax, we get about 50% of that, and that is administered by DeKalb County. When I was on the other side of the street, I was part of that administration. I think the Board of Ed would have the right, if we wanted to go over there and take a look at the calculations, okay? Though I'm not familiar with it myself, a recession sometimes drives down your liquor sales, okay? And so that could have something to do with it. I think now that we're getting to the summer, it might pick up. I don't know.
Yeah, and the second question is rather on the surplus. Is that like in a liquid account, or do we put that in?
Sure, you mean the fund balance?
The fund balance, right?
Okay. Keep in mind that that fund balance is made up of a number of components. You have some receivables in there, you have some true cash, okay? The true cash part of it will be in a money market fund, a money market account. Right now, we're yielding about a 0.15 on that, but it is immediately liquid. You pay for liquidity, as you know, Mr. Mayfield, okay? We're going to be talking to the bankers in the next couple of weeks to see what we can do in terms of bettering that. There's this sort of a shock that the stock market is so high, people thought bonds and other interest rates would follow it up. Hasn't happened.
Mr. McMahon?
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Bell and Superintendent Thurman, fantastic job this year with the financials and with all of our requests for additional information, clarity, savings. It's been outstanding, outstanding. Real quick, on page 1 of the financials, just debt service. I see we got can you tell me when the principal payments due? Is that due in the next 30 days for this fiscal year? We've allocated budget of $1,951,000 for the year. Interest expense, I think, is what, that $445, and then we got a principal payment of $1 million.
Yeah, that payment is the remnant, I think, of the famous textbook lease, okay? I couldn't tell you exactly when the principal is due, but, you know, you'll see in the proposed budget we're setting aside about $1.4 million for debt service payment in that regard. Our other general obligation debt has been taken care of, okay? The next big principal payment will come with the $33,300,000 bond issue that took place in December of 12, and that is a bullet payment, quite honestly, that comes in 17.
Okay.
So it's interest only on those bonds right now, but then when you get into 17, you're going to pay the whole $33 million on it. Now that, of course, comes out of SPLOST money.
That is, but this is part of our general operating expenses, since it's fallen on instead of capital outlay. Is that?
That's correct. And if you go over to the 13 column on page 1, you see that $13,496,000. Okay, most of that is the textbook lease payoff.
From last year, is that it? Is that what you're saying?
I think it was done in 12, I think.
I'm just looking for that $13 million that you were just pointing to.
Go up to the last column
Right.
under
Yeah.
FY13.
Yeah, last year, fiscal. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Can you, when you started your presentation today, you said 83.3% of the budget expenditure, which is straight line math. Yeah. Right?
10 months out of 12.
Any explanation on instruction? We originally budgeted $358. We asked for another $5 million to $364,291, and we're at 78.9% through April. Which, if it was a straight line, and I know our costs have gone up each month. I'm looking for an explanation really on, are we straight lining for our 364 number for the end of the year? Are we going to have savings there at the end of the year, projected savings? And if so, the rationale behind the savings?
Well, I'm not certain we would have savings. What you see in these types of elements are a lag and sometimes a substantial lag. I wouldn't think 78.6 compared to a straight 83.3 is much of a lag. But there's stuff that's in process. As you get to the end of the year, it gets processed. So we'll see.
These are salaries, right?
I don't know if this is all pure salaries. I'd have to check and see.
Can we get clarification on that?
Yes, sir, we can do that.
All right, I appreciate that. Page 4. And this is kind of where we get into the detailed on receipts. I'm looking at other. Budgeted kind of 3.7 million for the year. We've received year to date 675. Are these grants? Can you explain what that other is? It says business, math, and science supplements. Would that be considered grants? Or
I'm not certain. I'll have to check on that, and I'll get you an answer before the
Okay.
end of the meeting, okay?
and on pages 5 through 8, it's probably a similar question on the other categories, where on disbursements, we've budgeted for one amount, amended the budget for another amount, and we have savings on the majority of these. So if we can just bring some clarity onto those.
Check on that, yes, sir, but you're aware that the amended budget was the mid-year activity,
Correct.
where we amended the budget up about $8 million, I think, in some areas, in total.
Sure. And there's obviously an explanation for our amended budgets.
Yes.
Right. Let's see. Budget transfers at the end of the report. This is like page 36. Not 36, but 32, 3, and 4. I looked over the last 12 months, and this is a monthly report where we do transfers, budget adjustments, line items, where we're essentially moving money in between our system. Saw historical averages, except for year end, are in a few $100,000 on a monthly basis. April of this year, we were close to $3 million, and then this month we were almost $6 million in transfers. With that being said, that's kind of to that document I gave you on the funds accounts, and I'll just, for the rest of the board, kind of hand out this one little piece right quick. You need your readers for that. And what this spreadsheet is from our vendor spend, where all of our expenses are categorized within these different funds, about 10 different funds. And I know it's a small portion of our overall billion-dollar budget, where we're only moving about less than 1% of our funds around. But it comes down to, in my opinion, allocation or just budget analysis, to where we are asking for a budgeted amount. And in the past, I think this process might have been a punitive process. Why this, why that? I think, in my opinion, it would be more of a collaborative, clarifying process to understand more of, this is our projected expenses, we've come under it or exceeded it for whatever reason. And hence, this is why we're moving funds around to cover a shortfall here, or we have extra money under this budget. So what I did is, through our vendor spend, this is our year-to-date totals for each fund item. And if we can bring a little transparency for the public's sake in our budget process to understand what our funds are. And just from my observations, the 400 funds look like SPLOS monies or capital funds. I'm just guessing.
That's true.
And I'm not asking for an answer
correct.
right this second. But with that being said, I'd like to help with, it would help me in the budgeting process for next year to understand more of what our funds, big fund codes, I'm not talking about getting down in the weeds, but just these 10 or 11 different funds, what they represent, and provide some kind of clarity for the board and also the stakeholders who may be wondering the same thing.
Well, certainly your questions always are helpful, Mr. McMahon, but you're right. I mean, the budget adjustment documentation, there's a lot of it, okay? And I've noticed that since I've been here. But you're saying that these dollar amounts came from the vendor spends report.
You are correct.
Okay, so
It's not a comprehensive of our total budget. It's just
Sure.
one piece of it.
I understand, but so all payments on this page should be an expenditure from the district to an outside vendor. Except maybe for some other indirect cost or something that's on that page,
Sure.
okay? So, I mean, the budget adjustments are adjustments within the budget that, what my feeling is, we do too many of them, okay? And it's kind of an indication of sort of a lack of exactitude in our budgeting process, all right? That we do so many budget adjustments, okay? But it's not punitive at all. We make these adjustments at the request of the operating divisions, okay? When they go through the year and they need certain funds in a certain area. And of course, there are rules associated with how much we can move at their request without going to the superintendent or with going to the superintendent, okay? But I mean, we've had this conversation before. Keep in mind that the monthly financial report really is an expenditure, is a statement of the expenditures that we make internally on our budgets, okay? And the vendor spends report is a completely different type of animal. It's expenditures we make away from the school district to vendors.
Hence, and this just, the basis of this is the sources of the funds and the use of the funds. And I think it would help bring clarity to if we have overages or under, or that's my position.
Yes, generally, I mean, your Fund 101 is the general fund, which is a broader concept than the general operating budget that we report on in the monthly, okay? 201, that's federal and state grants. 203 and 4 is Title I. You're right, the 400 funds, 410, 415, 419, and 421 are SPLOS funds, okay? 422 is SPLOS 4. Athletics is 607 and 621. School nutrition is 622 and 627. And Fund 726, I think, is an agency account. Now, in the vendor spends report, you can't see them labeled like that? You can't? Okay, good. That's something we can do to make it more transparent, is maybe get some labels in there where people don't have to memorize the fund number, and to be able to, when you read the vendor spends report, it'll make more sense to you.
Maybe a legend or something. Or,
Okay.
yeah. All right.
Yes, sir.
And I'll work with you on the details at a later date, but just I appreciate your help. And you like I said when I started, what a fantastic job this year in providing that increased transparency for everybody. So thank you very much.
Dr. Marley?
Yes, I most certainly want to say that you all have done a fantastic job. I get concerned when we start. Thank you. You all have done a fantastic job, but I get concerned that the fact that we have a monthly budget meeting, we get together, we have a report, and then we start as a board doing our own research. And do we want to join the financial team, join the CFO, and begin to be a part of all of that? I most certainly trust that you all would not be making any adjustments that are not in line with what we've agreed, and again, not micromanaging and not giving the superintendent the opportunity to be able to make such decisions. So it concerns me that as we go through the process, we also have an opportunity before each board meeting to be able to ask for any clarifications and any questions that need to be. And I'd like to see that we take opportunity to utilize that time and utilize it effectively and efficiently, so that we're not at the board meeting beginning to sort of pick pick and look at different items that might not be as imperative to the whole budget process. But given the financial team, the superintendent and the CFO, the authority and the ability to carry on as well as they've done in the past, and trusting that this process is such, and that if it gets to a point that anything has to be adjusted, that the superintendent and the team will be able to come to the board and ask for that authority to move forward if it's a large sum of dollars. And I think that we have been transparent. I'd like to know that we're going to continue to be transparent with the public and letting them see that we are about spending these dollars, spending them correctly, or we would not have a balanced budget, would not have a general fund balance that will exceed $20 million. So I just would like to say that I would like to know that we're going to be a little more cautious and careful and understanding and respectful of the process and the things that are done, and not trying to get into the mire and begin to manage and stay in our lanes the way that we should be as a board.
No further questions or discussion. Is there any opposition to placing this item on the consent agenda? Hearing none, this item will be placed on the consent agenda.